Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Ground to Get Real Life Topics. I'm Bill Expected. My name is Brian Boyd. Tonight's topic is temptation. And everyone, as always, I pray you had an amazing weekend. Before we jump into this episode, please be sure like and follow the Grounded Podcast at every platform you have to be listening on. And with that being said, y'all, let's talk about temptation. And the biggest reason why I came up with this episode and this title tonight is from the simple notion that as people, no matter how big or small our situations may be, we all struggle with temptation. And for those who don't know what temptation is, it is defined in the Bible as something to be tried, tested, or proven. And the biggest example of temptation would be for us, even right now in today's time. You know, summertime, everybody's either trying to get in shape or they're trying to maintain the shape that they're in. And regardless of how much we try to do those things, there are a lot of stuff that are around us that are trying to keep us from getting in the shape that we are, whether that's food, whether that's clothes, whether that's doing things that we know we shouldn't do, whether that's not exercising at all. Regardless of the situation, there are things that are there that are trying to keep us from losing weight. And for us to get on our goals and for us to stay committed to the things that we said we're going to do, we have to avoid all of those things, or we have to be in the space where we're able to endure, not giving in to that particular thing. And for us as people, it goes far beyond just fitness, because at every point in our lives, no matter who you are, we all struggle with some form of temptation. There's at least one thing that every person struggles with. And tonight, I want to talk not more so about the things that we struggle with in particular, but more so how to overcome the things that we struggle with. And to do so, I'm going to be coming from 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13. And it reads that no temptation has overtaken you except that which is common to mankind. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond that which you can bear. But when you are tempted, he will also provide a way out so that you can endure it. And the first point that I want to hear, y'all, is this first piece of this verse, because it reads that no temptation has overcome you except that which is common to mankind. And everyone, simply put, this verse basically means that everything that we're faced with in life, no matter what that thing may be, is not something that no one hasn't dealt with before. Whether that was the beginning of time or the time that we're in right now, the stuff that we struggle with and deal with as people on a day-to-day basis is stuff that people have already dealt with and struggled with for thousands and thousands of years. And that gives me very, very great confidence, because it leads us to the summation that because those people dealt with those things, and because those people are still dealing with those things today, we can learn from the people that have overcome the situations that we're in. And that's what's so beautiful about even reading the Bible, because even though the Bible was written thousands of years ago, a lot of the stories in there, all of the stories in there, I should clarify, have been things and struggles that people have been dealing with since the beginning of time. And for us as people, we can look back on those stories at those times and understand the things that those people struggle with and the things that they did to overcome those particular struggles. And that in itself will give us the hope and will give us the confidence that we need to overcome the situations that we're in. The biggest example of this, and I want to go touch on, is the book of Exodus with Moses, because Moses was somebody that was on the mountain at the age of 75, if I'm not mistaken. And God had called him out of nowhere through a burning bush to tell him to go back to Egypt and to tell Pharaoh to let his people go. And even in this situation in Exodus chapter 3, we see Moses go through a struggle with God on multiple occasions, telling him why he can't go, whether that was for him not speaking, whether that for the people not believing in him, or for him going to Pharaoh himself, which was the king of the known world at that time. But on each separate occasion, God always reassured Moses that everything would be taken care of. And as long as he was going to do what God told him to do, that God would deliver his people from out of Egypt. And the thing that we struggle with here at the base is fear, because Moses did not want to go down there because he feared the outcomes that were going to come. But the promise here was that because God was sending him, God was going to cover him through the situation. And that speaks to so many people today, because there are a lot of things out here in the world that we want to do. There are a lot of things that we know we should be doing, but because of the fear of doing those things, or for the fear of the outcome of failing from doing those things, we don't do the things that we know we're supposed to do. But once again, the thing about temptation here and the thing about understanding this is that when we're pressured to stay back, when we're pressured to stay where we are and to not do the things that we know we're supposed to do, do, we have the promise that if we do those things and we believe that God truly places it in our heart to go and get those things, that he will cover us and give us all of the things and the reassurance that we need to go and get those things. So if you're one of those people out there right now and you're struggling with the fact, or you may be fearful over the situation that you may not be confident or you may not be enough to go and get the things that God has placed in your heart to get, I'm here to tell you that God has given you the power already. He's already made the provision for you, and you have to go out there. But in order to do that, you have to overcome the temptation to stand behind. You have to overcome the temptation of being fearful of the things that you're doing. And when you do, and when you overcome those things, you can go into the destiny that God has out there for you. But with that being said, y'all, that is going to bring me perfectly into the second point and the part of this verse. And it reads that, and God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond that which you can bear. And going back to that previous point, Paul here is telling us that regardless of the problems that we face, regardless of the temptation that we may be faced with, God will not give us things that are too much for us to handle. So even going back to the story of Moses, with him going to release God's people out of Egypt, God had given him that task because God knew that Moses was equipped to handle that task. And that gives us confidence because there are things that God will tell us. There are dreams and stuff that he will give us to do. And they just seem like they're too much. They just seem completely overwhelming to the human imagination. But God here assures us that he is faithful in every situation, and he will not give us something that we cannot overcome. So once again, if you're somebody out there and you're in this particular situation, understand that God, no matter what it is, he will give you the strength and all that you need. And if he didn't know that you could accomplish that thing, he would have never gave it to you. Okay. And that's another thing that we all, struggle with on a day-to-day basis, because like I said, once again, this stuff looks scary. This stuff looks, insurmountable, but the fact of which is that God will give you the ability to overcome those things. So even if you're dealing with a struggle on a day-to-day basis, you may be dealing with paying your bills, you may be dealing with struggles of going to work or something like that, or you may have relationship problems or things like that. God is faithful, and God will give you the strength to overcome those things. But you have to be the person to understand that this is a temptation that is in your way. This is something that is going to block you from getting to where you need to be. And in order for you to get there, you have to be willing to go through the fire. You have to be able to go through the struggle, and you have to be able to overcome that thing that you're dealing with. Okay. But with that being said, y'all, I'm going to jump to the third and final point of this episode. And that reads that when you are tempted, he will also provide a way out so that you can endure those things. And right here, everyone, is the promise that God gives us, that when we're faced with those situations, that he will always give us a way out. And from my study and from my personal experience, I have come up with three reasons or three ways that God will get us out of the situation. The first of which is that when we're faced with temptation, when we're faced with things that will try to knock us off the path that we're on, God will give us strength. And that comes from Isaiah 40:31. It reads that, but those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on their wings like eagles. They will run and not go weary. They will walk and not be faint. So even when you're facing a hard situation, when you're facing a long situation, God gives us the promise that he will renew our strength. He will give us the strength to go through the things that we're struggling with. And that is so important because there are times, there will be situations in life, there will be paths that we will go down, and no matter how much we're doing, no matter how hard we're working, it seems like the things aren't working out. The things that we're doing, it seems like they will not work out for us. They will not make their way. And even in that time, the temptation for us to stop is so strong. But right here, God has given us the promise that he will give us the strength to go through. And once again, once you realize this and once you understand that he will give you the strength to go through these things, you have to claim it, you have to receive it, and you have to go after that thing with everything in you. But moving right along, the second thing that God will also give you is peace. And that comes from Philippians 4:6-7. And it reads that, be not anxious for anything, but by prayer petition with thanksgiving, present your request to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. So everyone right here, God is letting us know that even when we go through struggles, even when we're whatever, to don't worry about the stuff that we're going through, but in all things through prayer and petition and thanksgiving, let our stuff be known unto him. Let him know the things that we're going through. And when we do those things, when he let him know the stuff that we're going through and the struggles that we have with the situations that we're being tempted with, he will give us peace over the situation. He will give us clarity. He will give us the ability to go through that thing no matter what it is that we're tempted with. And if you're one of those people out there, you may have been struggling with things and going through situations, but understand that if you just pray to God and talk to him and let him know what you're going through, let him know the stuff that you need, and he will give you the stuff that he will give you the power, he will give you the prosperity that you need to go through the situation. And everyone, out of all the situations, this is probably the biggest one, to be real with you, because peace above all things will give you the calmness to overcome anything that you're struggling with, no matter how hard that thing may be. And at every point in my life, I can imagine, like, there have been so many situations that God has brought me through. There have been so many things that I struggle with on my own that I got myself into. But even in those situations, God has given me the peace to overcome those things. And right now, everyone, like I said, that's one of the most important things. That if you get nothing else from this episode, just know that when you're faced with temptation, always pray and ask God for peace, all right? Because he will give you that thing, and you will be able to endure the things that you're going through. And last but not least, the final point of this episode and the final point of this third piece is that sometimes in some situations, in order to go through this temptation, you may have to avoid the situation altogether. And this verse is going to come from 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 18. And it reads, to flee fornication. Every sin that a man does is without the body, but he that commits fornication sins against his own body. And everyone, while this definition does use the topic of fornication, it doesn't negate the fact that there are some things in life that we just have to get away from, whether that's people, whether that's situations, whether that's relationships, maybe that's something that we're working on or doing. We have to get away from the situations that we're in. And this doesn't come oftentimes, but there are situations where this may be applicable. For example, going back to the first example about us trying to stay in shape and trying to keep in shape. If you're in a place where you haven't ate and you're just driving by fast food places or stuff like that, right? Keep going. Don't even look. Don't think about it. Keep going. All right. If you're in one of those things, you may have been in a situation with people or whatever, and you can't be around that person. Don't go around that person. Block their number, block their email, do whatever it is you got to do to stay away from that person. And even when it comes to just situations in general, if you know that you can't go to a certain place, if you know you can't do certain things, because if you do those things, it'll send you down a spiral of other things that you're not truly supposed to do. You may have to avoid those situations altogether. And there's nothing wrong with that, even as a believer, because there are some things at different walks in my life that I just would not go, I would not do, I would not even get involved with, because I knew at that time that I just was not strong enough as a person to deal with those situations, to deal even with some people that were in and out of my life at that particular time. But now I've reached a point to where I can endure a lot of those things. And even in times where I may not be able to endure certain situations or certain places, I still do not go to. And for somebody who's out there, if you're going through some stuff, I'm just here to tell you that sometimes you may just have to leave the situation entirely. I'm telling you, because it's better to leave that situation than to be in a place to where you may be enticed to do something that you're not supposed to do. All right. But with that being said, y'all, that pretty much concludes this episode. I truly hope that you got something out of this. If you liked the video, please be sure to like and follow the Grounded Podcast once again, and to share this across social media. I love you all so much. And like I said, I hope you got something out of this thing, because temptation is truly, truly, truly something that we all may struggle with. And it's something that we all have to constantly overcome in life if we're going to get and live the lives that we're supposed to do. And in these situations, it's good to know and it's good to understand how to overcome those temptations when we're faced with it. And like I said, the biggest thing to understand when it comes to temptation is that everything that we struggle with are things that we all dealt with at some point in time. And in order to overcome that, we have to realize that and draw from the lessons of other people in order to overcome it. And last but not least, the biggest way to overcome temptation is to simply rely on God when we're faced with stuff. When things look like they're too much for us to bear, they look like they're too much for us to overcome, trust in God, pray in God, and keep moving forward. And I'm telling you, when you do these things, there'll be no temptation that you're faced with. There'll be no struggle that you're faced with that you won't be able to overcome. But with that being said, y'all, I'm about to get out of here. I'm talking a little too much now, but I pray you all have an amazing week, and I will see you all bright and early on Monday morning. All right, my name is Brian Boyd. I'm signing off. Peace.